The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building ever made by any species in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between 3 star systems, and ships from 100 different worlds came and went every single day. The walls were made of crystal that showed the stars outside, and the floor was polished metal that reflected the faces of everyone who walked on it. David Parks stood at the center of this hall. He wore the simple blue uniform of a human ambassador, and his black hair was neatly combed. His face showed a polite smile, the same smile that every human ambassador had worn for 300 years. Behind him, floating screens showed the faces of billions of humans watching from Earth and colonies. 12 alien races sat in a circle around him. Each one had their own section, their own chairs designed for their strange bodies, their own flags hanging above them. The Velith were tall and gray, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow. The Kreth were small and covered in hard shells, like insects the size of dogs. The Orcs had 6 eyes and moved on tentacles instead of legs. David cleared his throat. His voice was calm and respectful. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began, "I come before you today to once again request justice for the human people." He pressed a button on his small device. Images appeared in the air above him. Ships burning, bodies floating in space, crying children, empty cities. In the past year alone, David continued, the Velith Dominion has taken resources worth 3 billion credits from our colony on New Haven. They gave no payment. They gave no warning. They simply arrived with warships and took what they wanted. The Velith ambassador made a sound like laughter. His yellow eyes looked bored. David kept his smile in place. The Kreth Assembly has kidnapped 47 human scientists from Research Station Delta 9. These scientists had families, children who now cry for parents who will never come home. The Kreth delegate cleaned his shell with his front legs. He did not even look at David. "And the Orcs Collective," David said, his voice still perfectly polite, "destroyed 3 human cargo ships last month. 212 people died. Their crime was traveling through space that the Orcs decided belonged to them." The Orcs ambassador blinked all 6 of his eyes slowly. "Those ships were in restricted space," he said lazily. "They should have known better." David took a deep breath. "We have filed 7,000 complaints with this council over the past 50 years. 7,000 times we have asked for justice. 7,000 times we have been ignored." The Velith ambassador stood up. He was twice as tall as David, and his 4 arms crossed over his chest. "And what will you do about it, human? File complaint number 7001? He laughed again, and other aliens joined him. David's smile did not change. "We simply ask the Council to enforce its own laws. Laws that say no species may steal from another. Laws that say kidnapping is forbidden. Laws that say murder must be punished. Those laws," the Velith said, leaning down toward David, "are for species that matter." The laughter grew louder. Back on Earth, Admiral Grace Kim watched the scene on a large screen in the military headquarters. The room around her was dark and filled with screens showing data, maps, and the faces of other military leaders around the world. Grace was 52 years old. Her hair was gray at the edges, and her eyes had seen things that kept her awake at night. She had served in the human fleet for 30 years, and she had followed orders for every single one of those years. The orders were always the same. Be polite. Be patient. Do not fight back. Humanity is new to the galaxy, and we must prove we are civilized. General Marcus Lee stood beside her. He was a large man with broad shoulders and hands that had once been a boxer's hands. Now those hands held a folder marked with red letters that spelled out the words Directive 0. "They laughed at him," Marcus said quietly. "Again." Grace nodded slowly. Her jaw was tight, and her hands were closed into fists at her sides. On the screen, David was bowing politely to the council. "Thank you for your time," he said, his voice showing no anger. "I hope you will consider our requests." He turned and walked out of the great hall while aliens continued to laugh behind him. Grace turned away from the screen. She walked to a window that showed the blue curve of Earth below. Clouds swirled over oceans. City lights sparkled on the dark side. 7 billion people lived down there, and every single one of them had watched their ambassador be mocked. "How long has it been?" she asked. 300 years since first contact," Marcus answered. 300 years of smiling and asking nicely. Grace closed her eyes. She remembered her grandmother's stories. Before the aliens came, humans had fought each other. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash. When the alien ships first appeared in Earth's sky, humanity made a choice. They decided to be better. They decided to show the universe that humans could be peaceful, could be kind, could be civilized. They locked away their weapons. They trained their soldiers to be diplomats. They taught their children to smile and negotiate and never, ever fight back. "My grandmother used to tell me something," Grace said softly. "She said that being polite does not mean being weak. It means being strong enough to choose peace." "And now?" Marcus asked. Grace turned back to the screen. David's face appeared as he entered his ship. He looked tired. So very tired. "Now I wonder if we chose wrong." Her communicator buzzed. David's voice came through, small and defeated. "They rejected everything." The Velith ambassador laughed in my face. The whole council laughed. Grace picked up the communicator. "I saw. What do we do, Grace? How many more years do we smile? How many more people do we lose?" Grace looked at Marcus. He held up the folder. Directive 0. The protocol written 200 years ago by generals and admirals who knew this day might come. A protocol that every human leader had hoped would never be needed. "David," Grace said slowly, "come home. We need to have a meeting. A very important meeting." "What kind of meeting?" Grace took the folder from Marcus. She opened it and looked at the first page. The words were simple but heavy with meaning. "The kind of meeting," she said, "where we decide if humanity wants to stay polite." The line was quiet for a long moment. Then David spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Are you sure? Once we do this, there is no going back." Grace looked at the earth below, at the stars above, at the folder in her hands. "Polite mode off," she said quietly. "Effective immediately." Somewhere in space, the alien council continued their meeting. They laughed at jokes about humans. They made plans to take more human resources, kidnap more human scientists, destroy more human ships. They did not know that. Everything had just changed. They did not know that. The smile they had mocked for 300 years was about to disappear, and they did not know that behind that smile, humanity had been hiding fangs. 3 days passed after the council meeting. 3 days of silence from Earth. The alien races noticed this silence, but they did not think much about it. Humans were always quiet. Humans were always polite. Humans never did anything interesting. Commander Vex of the Velith Dominion stood on the bridge of his warship. The Iron Claw. He was old for a Velith, with gray skin that had turned almost white and yellow eyes that had seen 1,000 battles. But he had never fought humans. Nobody fought humans. There was no need. "We arrive at the human colony in 1 hour," his navigation officer reported. Vex nodded. He looked at the fleet behind his ship through the rear cameras. 30 warships, all painted black and gold. They were heading to Colony New Haven for what the Velith called resource redistribution. The humans called it theft, but who cared what humans called anything? "Send a message to their governor," Vex ordered. "Tell them we are coming for their mining outputs." Tell them to have everything ready for transfer when we arrive." The communications officer laughed. "Should I add please at the end, sir?" The humans liked that word. The whole bridge laughed. Vex smiled with his wide mouth full of sharp teeth. "No, let us see if they file a complaint about our rudeness." More laughter filled the bridge. 1 hour later, the Velith fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the brown and green planet of New Haven. The planet had 3 moons, and the humans had built mining stations on each one. Rich metals lay beneath the surface, metals that the Velith wanted. "Strange," the sensor officer said, staring at his screen. "I am not detecting the usual patrol ship." Vex shrugged. Perhaps they finally gave up. What is one small ship against 30 warships anyway? He opened a channel to the planet. "Human colony, this is Commander Vex of the Velith Dominion. Prepare your mining outputs for immediate transfer. You have 2 hours to comply. There will be no negotiation." Static answered him for a moment. Then a human voice came through, but it sounded different from what Vex expected. There was no fear in it. There was no polite begging. "Velith Fleet, this is Captain Jenny Han of the United Earth ship Vengeance. You are in human space without permission." Vex laughed. "Vengeance? What a dramatic name for a human ship. Tell me, Captain, do you plan to file a complaint against me?" The human woman's voice remained flat and cold. "I plan to give you 60 seconds to leave. Starting now. 59, 58. The Velith bridge went quiet. This was not normal. This was not how humans talked. "Is this a joke?" Vex asked. Humans do not give ultimatums. Humans ask nicely and then go away when we say no. 47, 46. Vex felt something strange in his stomach. It might have been the beginning of fear, but he pushed it away. He had fought real enemies before. Humans were not real enemies. Humans were soft and polite and harmless. "Even if you wanted to fight," Vex said, "you have 1 ship. I have 30, 32. The sensor officer suddenly made a choking sound. Sir, I am detecting new contacts. Behind the largest moon." "How many?" The officer's gray face went pale. 47 warships, sir. All human. All heavily armed." Vex stared at his screen as human ships appeared one by one from behind the moon. They were not small patrol ships. They were battleships, cruisers, destroyers. Ships with weapons that glowed red and hungry. "This is impossible," Vex whispered. "Humans do not have a war fleet. They are pacifists." 18, 17. "You would not dare attack us," Vex said, his voice shaking now. "The Council will destroy you. You will start a war you cannot win." 9. "I am warning you, human. We are the Velith Dominion. We have conquered 20 star systems. You are nothing but." 3, 2, 1. The channel went quiet. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Jenny Han looked at her weapons officer. Tommy Yu was young, only 25 years old. He had graduated from the academy 3 years ago, trained in weapons that he was told he would never use. For 3 years, he had sat in his station and watched aliens hurt his people. For 3 years, he had waited. Jenny gave him a single nod. Tommy pressed the button. The first nuclear missile left. The Vengeance at half the speed of light. It crossed the space between the 2 fleets in less than 3 seconds. The Velith flagship Ironclaw had no time to raise shields, no time to move, no time to do anything except exist for one more heartbeat. Then it was light and fire and nothing. "Commander." Vex died without even knowing what had hit him. One moment, he was shouting threats. The next moment, he was atoms spreading through space. The rest of the Velith fleet panicked. Ships turned in every direction, trying to run. But the human fleet was faster. Missiles filled the space like angry stars. Laser beams cut through Velith hulls like hot knives through butter. Captain Jenny Han watched it all from her chair. Her face showed no joy, no excitement, only cold determination. "Target the engines of any ship trying to flee," she ordered. "I want survivors. I want witnesses. Someone needs to go home and tell the others what happened here today." "Yes, Captain." The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, 17 Velith warships were destroyed or burning. 8 more were captured, their crews taken prisoner. 5 managed to escape, running away at maximum speed toward Velith space. Jenny opened a channel to the fleeing ships. "Run home," she said, her voice calm as ice. "Tell your leaders what you saw. Tell them the humans stopped asking nicely. Tell them the humans turned off polite mode." She paused. "And tell them we are just getting started." The channel closed. Jenny sat back in her chair and looked at the burning wreckage floating through space. Pieces of Velith ships tumbled slowly, reflecting the light of distant stars. Tommy stood up from his station. His hands were shaking. "I did not think I would ever actually fire those weapons," he said quietly. Jenny nodded. "None of us did. We trained for 300 years hoping we would never need to fight. Was this right? What we just did?" Jenny thought about the question for a long moment. She thought about the 3 cargo ships the Orcs had destroyed. She thought about the scientists that Kreth had kidnapped. She thought about 300 years of smiling while aliens hurt her people. "I do not know if it was right," she said finally, "but it was necessary. For 300 years, we showed them kindness. We showed them patience. We showed them mercy." She stood up and walked to the window. The planet New Haven glowed below them, safe now. Human families on the surface would sleep without fear tonight. "They saw our kindness and thought we were weak," Jenny continued. "They saw our patience and thought we were cowards. They saw our mercy and thought we were fools." She turned back to Tommy and the rest of her crew. They were all watching her, all waiting for her to tell them what this all meant. "We are not weak. We are not cowards. We are not fools. We simply chose to be gentle because we hoped the galaxy would be gentle back." Jenny looked out at the stars. "The galaxy taught us a different lesson. Now we will teach one of our own." On a small Velith ship racing toward home, a young officer named Krev sat in the corner of the bridge and shook with fear. He had watched 17 ships die in minutes. He had seen weapons he did not know humans had. He had heard a human voice count down to destruction without any emotion at all. When they reached Velith space, Krev would tell everyone what he saw. He would tell them about the human fleet that appeared from nowhere. He would tell them about the countdown that nobody believed until it reached 0. He would tell them about the cold voice of Captain Jenny Han, and he would tell them something else, something that scared him more than the weapons or the ships or the death. He would tell them that the humans had not been angry. They had not shouted or cursed or screamed. They had simply stopped smiling, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. The news spread through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every species knew what had happened at Colony New Haven. 17 Velith warships destroyed. 8 captured. Hundreds of Velith soldiers dead or imprisoned. And all of it done by humans. The polite ones. The ones who filed complaints. The ones who asked nicely and accepted no for an answer. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Every ambassador rushed to the great crystal hall floating between the stars. Some came in person. Others appeared as holograms because their ships could not travel fast enough. But everyone came. This was too important to miss. Ambassador Rachel Cho represented humanity. She was 40 years old, with black hair pulled back tight and eyes that gave away nothing. She had served as Earth's backup ambassador for 5 years, always standing in the shadows while others smiled and begged for scraps of justice. Now, She sat in humanity's chair at the center of the council hall. Her legs were crossed. Her hands rested calmly on her knees. Her face showed no expression at all. Around her, aliens screamed and shouted and pointed fingers. They attacked without warning. The new Velith ambassador roared. He was younger than the old one, with darker gray skin and eyes that burned with fury. They destroyed 17 ships. They killed hundreds of our people. This is murder. This is war. They gave a warning, Rachel said quietly. 60 seconds. Your commander chose not to believe it. 60 seconds is not a warning. 60 seconds is nothing. Rachel tilted her head slightly. Strange. When your ships arrived at our colonies to steal our resources, you gave no warning at all. Not even 60 seconds. The Velith ambassador sputtered. That is different. That is different how? Rachel asked. Her voice was still calm, still soft. When you take from us, it is business. When we defend ourselves, it is murder. Is that the rule? The chamber fell into angry muttering. The Kreth ambassador stood up on his many legs. His shell was bright red, a sign of high status among his people. The human fleet appeared from nowhere, he said. You have been hiding military power. This is against council agreements. We have been building ships for defense, Rachel replied. Nothing in council law forbids this. Perhaps you never noticed because you never thought we would use them. You should not have used them. The Oryx ambassador shouted, his 6 eyes all focused on Rachel. Violence is not the human way. You are the peaceful species. You are the gentle species. You are. We are the species you have been robbing, kidnapping, and killing for 300 years, Rachel cut in. Her voice grew a little harder. We are the species whose complaints you laughed at. We are the species whose tears you ignored. She stood up from her chair slowly. The movement made several ambassadors step back. Some of them reached for weapons that were not allowed in the council chamber. Rachel noticed this. A small smile touched her lips. Are you afraid of me? I am just one human. I have no weapons. I am simply standing up. Nobody answered. Rachel began to walk toward the center of the chamber, where the speaker's platform stood. Her boots made soft sounds against the metal floor. Each step echoed in the sudden silence. For 300 years, she said as she walked, humanity has been polite. We have been patient. We have been kind. When you stole from us, we asked you to stop. When you kidnapped our people, we begged for their return. When you killed our children, we cried and filed complaints. She reached the platform and stepped up onto it. The central light of the chamber shone down on her, making her the brightest thing in the room. Do you know why we did this? Do you know why we smiled and asked nicely for 300 years? The aliens stared at her. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. Some looked scared. We did it because we believed in civilization. We believed that intelligent species could solve problems without violence. We believed that if we showed you kindness, you would learn to be kind. Rachel looked around at the 12 sections of the council. The Velith with their 4 arms. The Kreth with their hard shells. The Oryx with their 6 eyes. And all the others, species of every shape and size. We believed in you, she said softly. We believed you could be better. Her voice changed then. It grew colder, harder, like metal cooling in ice water. You taught our children a different lesson. You taught them that kindness means nothing. You taught them that patience is foolishness. You taught them that the only thing this galaxy respects is power. She paused and let the words hang in the air. So now we will speak the only language you seem to understand. The Velith ambassador slammed all 4 of his hands on his podium. The council will not allow this. We will unite against you. You will do nothing. Rachel interrupted. You will do nothing because you know what happens next if you try. She pulled a small device from her pocket and pressed a button. Holographic images appeared in the air around her. Ships. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of ships. Human warships that had been built in secret, hidden in asteroid fields and behind moons and in the dark spaces between stars. We have been polite for 300 years, Rachel said. But we have not been stupid. We knew this day might come. We prepared. The aliens stared at the images with wide eyes and open mouths. The human fleet was massive. It was larger than any single species' military. It was larger than some combined fleets. How? The Kreth ambassador whispered. How did you hide this? You never looked, Rachel answered simply. You never thought you needed to. We were just the polite humans. The harmless humans. The humans who smile and ask nicely. She switched off the hologram. Every ship you see has weapons that your scientists say should not exist yet. Our engineers have been working for 300 years with nothing else to do. They got very creative. Rachel stepped down from the platform and began walking back to her seat. As she passed the Oryx section, the ambassador flinched away from her. She pretended not to notice. Now, she said as she sat down and crossed her legs again, let us discuss the future. The Veleth will return everything they stole from human colonies. The Kreth will return our kidnapped scientists, alive and healthy. The Oryx will pay for the families of the people they killed. And if we refuse? The Veleth ambassador asked. His voice cracked on the last word. Rachel looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was not a polite smile. It was the smile of someone who held all the cards and knew it. Then we stopped asking nicely. The vote happened 1 hour later. Every demand was approved. No species voted against. Some because they wanted to make peace. Some because they were afraid. Some because they had begun to realize that maybe, just maybe, they had been wrong about humans all along. As the session ended, Rachel walked out of the chamber. In the hallway outside, she passed a group of young alien diplomats who had watched the whole thing. They pressed themselves against the wall as she approached, eyes wide with fear. Rachel stopped in front of them. I want you to remember something, she said gently. We did not want this. We did not enjoy this. For 300 years, we dreamed of a galaxy where kindness meant something. She looked back at the council chamber. You taught us that dream was foolish. So now we will build a new galaxy. One where justice is not just a word. One where laws actually mean something. She turned back to the young diplomats. You can be part of that new galaxy, but only if you understand one thing. What? One of them managed to ask. Rachel smiled again. This time, it almost reached her eyes. We chose to be polite. We can choose again. Remember that. She walked away, leaving them standing in the hallway with pale faces and shaking hands. Back on Earth, Admiral Grace Kim watched the recording of Rachel's speech. She watched it 3 times, and when it was done, she nodded slowly. We taught them, she said to herself. Now we will see if they learned. In the weeks after the council meeting, something strange happened across the galaxy. Species that had ignored humans for centuries suddenly became very interested in learning everything about them. Libraries that had never bothered to collect human books now demanded them. Scientists who had laughed at human research now studied it carefully. Leaders who had dismissed human history now read it through the night. They were all looking for the same thing. They wanted to understand how they had been so wrong. On the Kreth homeworld, a historian named Professor Zick worked in a small office filled with dusty files. He was old for a Kreth. His shell cracked and faded, but his mind was still sharp. He had spent his whole life studying other species, trying to understand them. But he had never studied humans. Nobody had bothered to study humans. Now, Zik sat before a pile of documents that had been ignored for decades. Old reports from the first days of contact. Studies that nobody had read. Warnings that nobody had believed. He found a research paper written by a human historian named Luke Beak. It had been submitted to the Galactic Library 50 years ago. The file showed that it had been opened only 3 times since then. Once by the person who filed it, once by a computer doing automatic backups, and once by Zik himself just now. The paper was titled, "A Warning to the Galaxy, Understanding Human Nature." Zik began to read. "Human history is written in blood," the paper began. "Before they reached the stars, humans spent thousands of years fighting each other. They developed weapons of terrible power. They built machines that could destroy cities in a single flash of light. They created poisons that could kill whole nations. They invented ways to hurt each other that no other species has ever imagined." Zik felt a chill run through his shell. He continued reading. By the time humans developed space travel, they had already fought 2 wars that killed hundreds of millions of their own kind. They had weapons that could crack the surface of their planet. They had bombs that could burn the sky itself. The professor stopped and checked the numbers. Hundreds of millions dead, in wars fought among themselves. He had never known this. How had he never known this? When humanity achieved first contact 300 years ago, they made a choice. They looked at themselves and did not like what they saw. They decided to be different. They decided to show the galaxy that they could be peaceful. They could be kind. They could be civilized. Zik, read faster now. But make no mistake, the violence was never removed. It was not destroyed or forgotten. It was locked away like a dangerous animal in a cage. The humans built that cage with laws and traditions and promises to each other. They taught their children that peace was better than war. They trained their soldiers to talk instead of fight. They became the polite species, the gentle species, the harmless species. But the cage was never empty. Zik turned the page with trembling claws. "I write this paper as a warning. I have studied human history. I have seen what they are capable of. Their entertainment shows warriors and battles. Their children play games about war before they learn to read. Their oldest stories are about heroes who conquered and destroyed. Politeness is not their nature. Politeness is their choice. And choices can be changed." The paper included images that made Zik feel sick. Human weapons from their past. Mushroom clouds rising over burning cities. Trenches filled with bodies. Ships sinking in dark water while soldiers screamed. These were the things humans had done to each other. To their own kind. To people who looked just like them. What would they do to aliens who had hurt them for 300 years? Other species in this galaxy have grown comfortable with human kindness, the paper continued. They see human smiles and think humans are weak. They hear human requests and think humans are cowards. They receive human complaints and think humans are helpless. This is a mistake. Perhaps the greatest mistake any species has ever made. The humans are not weak. A weak species does not survive thousands of years of war against itself. A weak species does not develop weapons that can destroy planets. A weak species does not spread across stars while carrying the memory of so much death. The humans are not cowards. A coward does not choose peace when they know they could win wars. A coward does not smile while being insulted. A coward does not show patience when they have the power to take revenge. The humans are not helpless. They are waiting. They are hoping. They are giving this galaxy every chance to treat them fairly. Zik found the final page. His eyes moved across the words slowly, taking in every single letter. I do not know when the humans will stop being polite. Perhaps never. Perhaps they have truly changed. Perhaps their cage will hold forever. But if you are reading this, and if humanity has finally shown its teeth, then know this. You were warned. You had 300 years to be fair. You had 300 years to be kind. You had 300 years to treat them as equals. You chose differently. And now they have made a choice of their own. The paper ended with a single line that Zik would never forget. Do not mistake their smile for softness. The humans chose to be polite. Pray you never give them a reason to choose otherwise. Zik sat back in his chair. His claws were shaking so badly he could barely hold the pages. 50 years ago. This paper was written 50 years ago. Luke Beak had tried to warn them. And nobody had listened. Nobody had cared. Because humans were just the polite ones. The harmless ones. The ones you could push around without any consequences. Zik thought about all the things his people had done. The scientists they had kidnapped. The technology they had stolen. The times they had laughed at human requests for justice. He thought about the Velith fleet burning in space. He thought about the human warships appearing from behind the moon. He thought about the cold voice counting down from 60 dot, and he understood, finally, what they had done. They had not been dealing with a peaceful species. They had been dealing with the most dangerous species in the galaxy. A species that had chosen to hide its claws and show only a smile. And now that species had decided to stop pretending. Zik grabbed his communicator and called his government. I need to speak to the High Council, he said. Immediately. I have found something they need to see. What is it? The voice on the other end asked. Zik looked at the paper in his hands. At the images of mushroom clouds and burning cities. At the words of warning that nobody had heard. Proof, he said quietly. Proof that we made a terrible mistake. And maybe, if we are very lucky, instructions on how to survive it. He began sending the document to every leader on his planet. Then to every leader in the council. Then to every library, every school, every news station. Within hours, the paper that had been read only 3 times in 50 years had been read by billions and across the galaxy. Species that had laughed at humans began to understand what that laughter would cost them. The cage was open now. The animal was free, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since the battle at Colony New Haven. 6 months since the countdown that changed everything. 6 months since humanity stopped being polite, that the galaxy looked very different now. The Velith Dominion had surrendered completely. Their great war fleet, once the pride of their empire, had been defeated in 4 separate battles. Each time, the humans had given them 60 seconds to withdraw. Each time, the Velith had refused to believe. Each time, they had learned the hard way. The last battle took place near the Velith homeworld itself. The human fleet appeared in their sky like a storm of angry stars. Admiral Grace Kim had sent a simple message. Surrender now, or your planet burns. They surrendered in less than a minute. The Kreth Assembly had done something their species had never done before. They held public trials for their own leaders. The officials who had ordered the kidnapping of human scientists were found guilty and executed. The scientists themselves were returned to Earth, alive and healthy, just as Rachel Cho had demanded. The Kreth ambassador came to Earth personally to apologize. He knelt before the families of the kidnapped and begged for forgiveness. Some families forgave him. Others did not. Grace Kim watched and said nothing. Forgiveness was not hers to give or take. The Arcs Collective simply vanished. One day their ships were in their home systems. The next day they were gone. They left behind only empty stations and a single message broadcast on every channel. We are sorry. Please do not follow. Nobody followed. The humans had no interest in chasing enemies who ran. They had other things to do. Now, Grace Kim sat in a conference room aboard a human space station. The room was simple, with white walls and a long metal table. Through the window, she could see ships from a dozen different species floating peacefully. Some were human. Some were alien. All were waiting to see what would happen next. Across the table sat representatives of the 8 alien races that remained in the Galactic Council. 4 had fled or been destroyed. 8 had surrendered and asked for peace. They looked at Grace with eyes full of fear and hope and uncertainty. General Marcus Lee stood behind Grace, his hands folded behind his back. Beside him, Ambassador David Park held a folder containing a document that would change everything. Grace looked at each alien, face slowly before she spoke. "We could conquer you all," she said. Her voice was calm and quiet, but everyone heard every word. "Our strategists say we could control the entire galaxy within 18 months. Maybe less." The alien delegates could not meet her eyes. Some stared at the table. Some looked at the floor. One of them was shaking so badly his chair rattled against the ground. "But we will not do this," Grace continued. The shaking alien looked up. Surprise filled his face. "You will not?" Grace shook her head slowly. "We turned off polite mode because we had to. Because our people were dying. Because our children were being taken. Because nobody listened when we asked nicely." She stood up and walked to the window. The stars sparkled beyond the glass like diamonds scattered on black silk. "We did not become monsters to stop being victims," she said. "We showed our strength so that we would never have to use it again." She turned back to face the delegates. 300 years ago, humanity chose to be peaceful. We chose to be kind. We chose to believe that the galaxy could be better than our own bloody history. Our voice grew softer but somehow more powerful. That choice was not a mistake. Our only mistake was thinking you would respect kindness without seeing our strength first. Marcus stepped forward and placed the folder on the table. He opened it to reveal a thick document covered in writing and symbols and seals. "This is a new treaty," he said. "Not like the old treaties that meant nothing. This one will mean something." Grace walked back to the table. Fair trade. Mutual respect. Laws that actually work. Justice that is not just a word. The delegates looked at the document like it might bite them. The Kreth representative reached out with one trembling claw and pulled it closer. "What if we refuse?" he asked quietly. His voice said he already knew the answer, but he needed to hear it. Grace smiled. It was a warm smile this time, almost kind. "Then we will ask you nicely to reconsider, once." The room was silent for a long moment. Then the Kreth representative picked up a pen. He signed his name at the bottom of the document. One by one, the others did the same. Within an hour, every delegate had signed. Grace picked up the document and looked at the signatures. 8 species had just agreed to treat humans as equals. Not because they wanted to. Because they had learned what happened when they did not. "There will be a new council," Grace said. "Humanity will have a seat at the table. A real seat, not a chair in the corner where we can be ignored." The delegates nodded quickly. "And this time," Grace added, "we will all remember what happens when the rules are broken." The meeting ended. The delegates left quickly, eager to get away from the humans who had taught them such a painful lesson. 1 year later, Ambassador David Park returned to the Great Crystal Hall of the Galactic Council. The hall looked the same as always, with its walls of crystal and its floor of polished metal. But everything else had changed. The delegates treated him with respect now. When he spoke, they listened. When he made requests, they were considered fairly. When he smiled, they smiled back, though some of those smiles still held fear. David walked through the halls with his aide, a young woman named Lisa Moon. She had been with him for 3 years, through all the hardest times. She had watched him be laughed at and mocked. She had watched him come back again and again, always polite, always patient, and she had watched him change. "You know what is funny?" David said as they walked past a group of alien diplomats who bowed their heads respectfully. Lisa raised an eyebrow. "What? They think the scary part was when we stopped being polite. It was not?" David stopped at a large window that looked out at the stars. Ships moved peacefully in the distance. Human ships and alien ships working together, trading, cooperating, building something new. "No," he said quietly. "The scary part is that we chose to be polite again." Lisa thought about this. "I do not understand." David turned to face her. His eyes were serious but kind. "We showed them what we could do. We showed them the weapons we had hidden, the fleet we had built, the anger we had controlled for 300 years. He looked back at the window, and then we put it all away. We locked the cage again. We put on our smiles again. We went back to being the polite humans who ask nicely and believe in peace. Is that not good?" Lisa asked. David nodded slowly. "It is very good. But think about it from their side. They know now what we are capable of. They have seen the fire behind our smile. They have counted the ships and the weapons and the soldiers." He paused. "And now they have to watch us choose to be gentle again. They have to sit across the table from people who could destroy them and see those people choose kindness instead of war." Lisa understood now. They gave us a reason to stop being polite. And they will spend every day wondering if they will give us another reason. Exactly. David smiled. "We did not just win this war. We won something bigger. We proved that strength and kindness can exist together, that you can have the power to destroy and still choose to build." He started walking again, and Lisa followed. "But they will always wonder," David continued. "Every time they think about cheating us or hurting us or laughing at us, they will remember. They will remember the countdown. They will remember the burning ships. They will remember the voice of Captain Jenny Han saying 60 seconds. They reached the door to the council chamber. David stopped with his hand on the handle. "And they will ask themselves, is it worth it? Is it worth making the humans stop being polite again?" Lisa looked at the closed door. Beyond it, 8 alien species waited to begin a new era of cooperation. An era built not on trust, but on respect. Not on friendship, but on understanding. "What do you think the answer will be?" she asked. David opened the door. The aliens inside rose from their seats as he entered. They bowed their heads. They waited for him to speak first. He smiled at them. A warm smile. A genuine smile. A smile that had 300 years of patience behind it, and 300 years of hidden fangs. "I think," David said quietly to Lisa, "they finally learned the lesson we were trying to teach all along." "What lesson is that?" David walked into the chamber to take his seat among the leaders of the galaxy. That the most powerful thing in the universe is not a weapon or a fleet or an empire. The most powerful thing is the choice to be kind when you do not have to be. He sat down and looked at the faces around him. Aliens who had once laughed at humanity. Aliens who now feared humanity. Aliens who were slowly, carefully, learning to respect humanity. "We chose to be polite," David said to the council, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We can always choose again. But I hope, for all of our sakes, that we never have to." The council meeting began, and across the galaxy, peace held. Not because there were no weapons, but because everyone remembered what happened when the humans stopped smiling, and nobody wanted to see that again.